Hello everyone, I'm happy to see you. Welcome to my channel, Working Through the Agenda. I'm your host, Jackie. Today we will discuss how to navigate through the daily agenda of yourself and those around you. In the last video, we explored finding your voice. What does your voice sound like? How do we find it? We discussed how to determine your own agenda and what do you want to do with your own life. And today I want to build on that with you guys. I want to talk about a little bit more in detail, what does it mean working through the agenda? And I can give you examples of working through the agenda, and that's my hope, to create a space where we can encourage one another to have conversations about things that are going on in our lives. And as I've had experiences for me, I have learned that there are many agendas out there. And an agenda isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, if you're in a meeting, they generally have what is the agenda for the meeting, and what is the agenda for the school year. You know, there are so many different things that an agenda is used for. And, you know, the foundation of an agenda is what are we looking to accomplish? So, as I've done my work and worked through many things, I've realized that agendas change over time, just like every meeting. And it's really important to not only understand what your own agenda is, but the agenda of those around you. So, for example, when we discussed in our last video finding your voice, well, there are steps to find your voice, especially if you've spent a lot of time not listening to your own voice, not listening to your needs. Over time, the agenda becomes what are you being told to do and what voice is telling you to do things. So, finding your own voice, finding your own agenda can be extremely challenging. I know that I have had a lot of things happen in the last few years that have really forced me to start to find my voice. About 3 years ago, my mom passed away. We had a property we were remodeling. That property burnt down. I had a friend lose another family member. We had family that was in the hospital, and there were so many things going on, and it all happened at once. And I was one of those people that always put things in a box, in a closet, you know, for next season, or I don't have time to go through this, but I can't throw it away type thing. I don't know if a lot of people are good at cleaning out their closets, but I'm not always good about it. It's kind of better if my husband goes behind me and throws things away. And I can tell you that's a lot of our emotions. You know, if we don't work through them, they get stored somewhere. And if we don't address them, somebody else will. And it may not be what we want. We might miss something because we didn't focus on those things. So, anyway, 3 years ago, those things happened. And at the time, I was a software developer. I had gone back to school to become that. And I determined that I couldn't maintain my high performer personality as a developer with all of those things going on. So, I decided to take a step back so that I could focus on my own healing as well as be a support for my children, for my husband. And that was the first time I can recall in my adulthood making a decision that I didn't have a backup plan. The backup plan was I need to heal, and I don't like the person I am right now. I can't manage things. So that was really just I need to get to a place where I can be healed again. So I made the choice to stop being a developer at that time and just focus on our house, finding a place to live, getting our kids back in school, doing all the things that we could do in increments. And once I did that, number one, making the decision to leave my job was devastating for me. I cannot tell you all the emotions I feel like came at that time when I made that decision to leave the job. I cried and I cried till I probably had no tears left. It was just so emotional for me to make that decision for myself. So that was the start of finding my voice, figuring out what I needed. I had reached a breaking point and I needed to rebuild. So for the last 3 years, I have gone through many cycles of finding my voice. And during that process, there are a lot of things I have learned. I've had conversations with so many other people, specifically women, in similar situations in the sense of being a high performer or somebody who doesn't deal with their emotions. And I have had these conversations with men as well. But I found that a lot of women struggle to share what our feelings and emotions are because we don't have time. And the thing is, we have to make time. So I'm trying to encourage and create this space where we make time together to really start to understand what our emotions are. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's okay. And there are things that will happen overnight, surprising things, things that you'll learn about yourself, and what you'll accept and what you won't accept moving forward. So those are the things, I just tell you that to let you know as you go on your journey, just understand that everybody's journey is different. The time period it takes to really start to find your voice takes a while, and your voice changes just like as you grow up from a baby, a toddler to an adult, your voice changes a lot. So I just wanted to lay that out there for you. So, in that understanding, knowing that your agenda will change over time, you need to understand that those around you, their agenda will change too. And so, it is very important to understand where you stand in life, how you feel about things, so that you can really start to assess those around you and determine if you want to participate in the agenda of others. And it is a choice. And that is not always an easy thing to accept. So, what does somebody else's agenda look like? I'll give you an example. An agenda for me would be I need a job to pay my bills. So, I'm going to apply for a job. I get this job, or I go to the interview. That is where they ask me, as the person that they wants the position, what are my goals? How would I approach these things? They're assessing my response. And then I, in turn, am assessing their response. And we are deciding if we have the same goals, if we have the same skill sets, if we are going to get to where we want to go. So those are the agenda. The agenda is they need somebody to fill a spot. I need to pay my bills, and I would like to fill that spot. So those are two agendas. So as you go in through life, understand that most people you interact with is going to have an agenda. And again, it is not necessarily a negative thing, but it is something that you need to consider whenever you're interacting with other people, investing your time and your energy, because you need to determine if you want to invest in the agenda of others. I don't know about you, but for me, I have struggled at times thinking that I didn't have a choice as to whether or not I could participate in the agenda of other people's, because they ultimately would be the deciding factor and I would just have to accept it. And I really have gone through some things in the last year where that really started to become something I couldn't accept any longer. For example, people, you work at a job and somebody's treated unfairly, and they prove that they did what they were supposed to be doing, and those in authority still decided that they didn't deserve a chance to keep going forward. And the person that was treated unfairly could choose to leave, they could choose to try and stay, but they probably wouldn't be given the job, or they would be put on a performance plan, or whatever was going on. The situation was those in charge don't want you there anymore, and it's time for you to move on. And, the agenda for yourself, you have to decide, is this something that I'm going to fight because I deserve to be here? I don't deserve this treatment. And there are steps you can take to determine if you can stay or if you can't. So when you identify that the agenda is not for you, but your agenda is still to either remain in the situation, you still need to pay your bills, what are things you can do to improve the agenda around you? Well, first of all, you need to identify that you are in a space that is not growing you. So how do we get out of that? And the first thing to do really is to assess, how do you feel in this environment? Do you have the skill set? Can you improve your skill set while you're here? What can you do to start to change things? That could be start having a more positive mindset about going into the place, having better interactions with other people, being more mindful of how you respond to other people. That can be asking for training to get better at something because you're not good at it or they don't feel you're where they want you to be. So you start to engage to see if you can improve those skill sets and if they will accept that you can improve those skill sets. And it's very important that you start to work on areas that you can grow yourself. Because a lot of times we can get tunnel vision and we can start to see, everything is bad, there's nothing I can do. And when you fall into that mindset, you will become what you are told. So, if, for example, you're this person that has skill sets and you're being told that you're doing a terrible job, nobody likes to hear that. It doesn't feel good. And, our first response is to either reject, to shut down, to be angry. There's so many responses that you can have in those situations. And it's okay to have your feelings about all of them. But in a professional setting, if you focus on what your agenda is, you need to determine what is your goal and how can this be met. So as you go through these agendas and you start to understand that you get to choose your participation. So as you work through these, you're working through it, you've gone through the training, you have improved your attitude, you have raised up your skill sets, but everything you're producing is still not being accepted. There are those around you that may say, hey, you're doing a wonderful job. I love what you're doing. I'm so thankful for you. But those in charge might not see a change. So over time, you can again start to assess what is your agenda. And your agenda is I have improved. I've done everything I can in this situation. So I feel like I can't stay here anymore. So there are two options there. You can continue to feel that way and stay in it. And eventually you could start to lose your confidence. You could start to feel like there's something wrong with you. And, a sense of doom, dread, all of those feelings will start to come in because you don't feel like you can get out of the situation. And maybe fear of not paying your bills is still keeping you there too. It's like, I haven't found something else. I can't get out of this. Those things, they come up. So there are things to assess. What are you willing to accept with the agenda that you have and that others have? I know for me, I've been through that cycle. I have, done what I could. And, the important part of understanding people's agenda is understanding that the agenda does not necessarily identify who the person is. It is just who they are in that environment with a goal they have set. What do I mean by that? There are people that can be focused on an outcome, and that is the only outcome they see needs to happen. So regardless of outside influences, they're not going to see it. They're not going to see improvement because they know what the outcome they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing you can do about those situations. You can't outperform an agenda that doesn't include you. And that is a really hard thing to accept. I know I've had some grief where, I was in a situation where I had done everything I could. I had focused on the agendas. I had made all kinds of improvements of myself. And I was making some really great progress and delivering some pretty great things. And none of it was seen. And I would be left shredded after giving something. And I really had to determine, what is my value, what is my worth, and who has the ability to tell me these things. And it is so important to identify those things because, either your best is better than everybody else's and it's just not seen, or somebody feels that somebody else would be better at your job and there's nothing you can do about that. If you are not in charge of it, you have to accept that. So, working through your feelings, what do you do? And again, that's where you decide with your agenda. Are you okay with being at a place that constantly tells you that you're not good enough? Are you strong enough to handle that and be like, just roll off the shoulder. I'm not worried about those things. Paycheck matters to me more than how I'm treated. And, you really have to identify what do you partner in with the agenda? Or do you decide that even if you don't have the next job lined up, but your mental health is more important, than somebody else controlling what your worth is, then you make that decision. Neither one of those choices sound wonderful to me, but it is, what is your agenda? And I know for me, over time, the question has really become even smaller. It has been, what is more important, the person or the situation? And so that is what helps me work through the agenda. What is more important, the person or the situation? And when I can do that, it really helps me take a step back and identify if I need to be as invested, if I should take it so personally, and really decide where I'm going to go with things. So, working through the agenda looks different for everybody. What you're willing to accept, what you're willing to change, and it is willing. It is a choice of how these things work, and just understanding that. So, as we work through the agenda, we'll talk about these things in many different episodes of, what does that look like? How do we work through it? And it really just comes down to what's on your agenda for today. And I know for me, what's on my agenda today is that I just want to encourage people to explore and understand, find your voice, understand that you're worth it, and you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. You can be the most amazing person in the world, and people won't see it. And that just means you're in the wrong place. It also could mean that you have come to an end of something you were great at, and maybe you need to start doing something else. It could be a combination of things. And once you're out of the situation, it could become clearer. But in the moment, it is so hard to break down those agendas. But by doing that, it does give you the opportunity to start to move yourself back from the chaos, from all of the feelings. So when you start to see, okay, I'm coming to work and I'm having a problem with this coworker. No matter what I do, I just seem to walk in and they're upset. Okay, so what have you learned about that coworker? How does that person interact? Do you have two completely different personalities? When you walk into the room, do they just assume that you want to be the center of attention? Do they just feel like you are better than them and everything you do just bugs them, that people like you? I mean, there are people that get frustrated with a person walking into the room and, making comments of like, oh, everybody just thinks you're great, or you just think you're so great. And I know that there have been plenty of people, as we talk about agendas and everything else, for a majority of my life, I did not understand the agenda. I didn't. And so I internalized a lot of what people said. And I took it as I did something wrong. And I just automatically assumed I was the problem. For those that don't want to deal with their own emotions, don't want to take responsibility for the things that they do and say, that's great. That makes their life a lot easier because they get to have power over somebody else and they never have to acknowledge that they have their own things to work through. For me, I was so busy working through everybody else's issues and problems, taking them on as my own, that along the way, that's how I lost my voice. And as I have come to the understanding that everybody has an agenda and really starting to prioritize my own agenda above that of others, I've really started to see some changes in myself, how I view things, in my confidence, and my ability to perform. So prioritizing what you need is one of the best things you can do for yourself. And you might not know what that is right off the bat. But it can start with feeling your feelings. Do you feel good when you wake up in the morning? Do you feel good when you dial in for work or drive to the office or go to that sports game or, whatever you're doing? Do you feel good in it? Do you feel good in your relationships? And, maybe you explore everything around you and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel good about anything. Well, there maybe need to be a lot of changes, but you got to start slow. You got to start with things that you can start to manage, and over time, changes will happen, and if you have a lot of people in your life that are not supportive, that don't encourage you, then understand that you've brought in a lot of people that need some growth as well. And it's okay if you need to find somebody new, but there's nothing wrong with you. I think that is so important for people to understand. Now, when you have friends, you might tease each other and be like, oh my gosh, if people only knew. And that's true, right? There's plenty of people that are going to be judging you and having problems with the way you do things. And, that's okay. They don't belong in your group chat of funny memes or sarcastic humor. But there are people out there that will be supportive, that want to cheer for you and think you're amazing. And I need you to remember that. Remember, you are amazing. We were all made to be different, and we were all made to be celebrated, and we should celebrate one another. So, as we go forward into this next week, please start to assess, what is your voice? How do you feel? What do you want to do? Maybe you want to, go travel the world, but you can't, right? So start traveling around your state, start traveling around your community. Make backdrops, start drawing, become creative, find ways to travel, start reading a book, start watching travel documentaries, start creating a way for what you want to happen. But you got to start. This is my second video, and I can tell you I've had so many nerves about it, wanting perfection, wanting to find that guidance to see, what is the right thing to say, what is the right thing to do. And as we go through this, we're going to figure it out together. I want to encourage people to just start. I know I have changed my agenda slightly, in the sense of, with this, I am going to get a backdrop and some lights, because I want to improve upon the background of this, because I'm invested. I'm excited about this, and I want to try new things. And that's about finding your passion. But the best thing I can tell you is to just start and really start to find your voice again, start to find that joy that you've been missing. And it's not gone. It's not just because you're now in your 30s or 40s or 50s, 60s, 100s. It's not just because you've gotten older. It's because we've gotten used to not listening to our voice. And nobody else can tell you what it takes to make you happy but you. So start listening. I look forward to speaking with you guys soon. Until next week, have a good day.